Greetings, everyone, on this snowy day. Welcome to the next episode of Healthy Believable Matters, and made the transition over to television for a little bit last episode, and I'm going to continue doing that. Given that I expect it to win a bunch of SAG Awards this weekend, I am going to be debuting some likely new colors in Baby Reindeer, because so far I've been looking at relationships and dynamics of varying degrees of nuance and complexity, all within the sort of moderate umbrella of health. And this time it's going to change, because First Red is going out today. And that's because this relationship is as close to unhealthy as you can get. And the only reason it is not it's Donny and Martha, obviously, the main relationship on the show. And the only reason it isn't the lowest color is because that lowest color would be reserved for Donny and Darren, which is pervasive, manipulative, physically abusive, involves power dynamics, involves quid pro quo, drugs. You talk about maybe the most unhealthy of all kinds of relationships, but playing on a person's desires and dreams, all that kind of stuff. And Donny and Martha are not that level of unhealthy, even though it's pretty close. You're talking about someone who is stalking someone else, and someone who has violence, maybe not in as pervasive a way as Darian, but, certainly outbursts and certainly attacks on their well-being. And certainly a deep contributor of trauma. But it's still not the lowest tier. And this is where we get into the believability section, which is purple. This is the first purple going on the channel. That means that the level of believability feels so high and so tight that it is an extra level above what would be considered just very good. Because blue is very good. Purple means it's extra. When we get into that believability section is the fact that on some level, Donny knows that Martha is a deeply troubled, lost, and sad soul like himself. And he knows that she isn't Darian. So that contributes to him, I think, soft keeping her at a distance and being nice to her, which leads her on. But he tries, I think, for a long time to not completely drop the hammer down, even though her presence is damaging his other relationship with Terry, even though it's damaging his ability to have a healthy sexual experience, even though it's damaging his ability to lead a healthy life. But that's because the Darien experience already severely damaged that. And on some subconscious level, he knows that Martha is a red compared to Darien being a black. And that feels true to this kind of dynamic, in which, and public safety alert, I'm going to talk about abuse here for the next minute or so. So if you need to skip ahead to following timestamp and be done with that. But it has definitely been true in seeing certain friends from some level of partial experience that if you've dealt with abuse, like real abuse, and then you experience soft abuse, the stalking, the emotional outbursts, the escalation in public spaces, there's a part of you that almost, you're both used to it being worse, but you also almost appreciate that it's not that bad at this point, and that keeps you stuck a little bit. Keeps you going back on some subconscious level, even though you're also trying to push this dynamic away at the same time. And it's an extremely destructive cycle. And this is where we get to the matter section. It does showing this relationship on screen matter. I'm gonna give it a white, which means it's a push. It's both a equal balance of positive and negative, and I'll explain why. I love the later episodes that show exactly the steps in which one needs to take to break out of this cycle, which is telling the truth. He tells the truth in a public setting. He tells the truth to his parents and is met completely with empathy and care and understanding and love, and his career takes off a little bit from telling the truth in public. And that feels true on the steps you need to take to break out of such a cycle. So the fact that then in the last episode you watch him slip back into the cycle, especially for people watching the show who maybe have gone through similar stuff, is such a gut punch. It feels true to life that you might start to miss that dynamic because you're used to it, even though you're sort of moving past it. And it's especially true that if you don't have anything else to lean on in terms of an intimacy level, because at this point towards the end he's lost Terry, it's harder to keep that progress going. But the fact that we watch him slip back towards Darian, slip back towards like deeply remembering the positive aspects of Martha, and this the baby reindeer titular story, and then he starts crying. I don't know. I would have loved to have seen, because that does feel true. She's showing that potential relapse, given how horrific a cycle it is that you're trying to break out of. I would have loved to see some kernel of uptick showing that, like, okay, relapses happen, but you still might be okay. Because instead, the way the show ends is sort of suggesting that people who have gone through this cycle might be sort of doomed to keep going through it. And that is true unless you make changes. But in episode 9, he makes those changes necessary to give yourself a shot. And even though, yes, relapses happen, given how believable, and I guarantee there's a lot of people out there in the world that connect with this story, like people in the comments, like I'm sure that's a gut punch to watch, and like I wouldn't want someone watching this to get to the end and think, well, I guess I'm stuck. I guess it isn't going to get better, because that's not true. You can get better with therapy, with healthy steps portrayed in the show, and I would want the takeaway to be a teeny bit more positive, especially because it was positive in episode 9. So that's why I have to say white instead of green or blue. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Stay safe out there, people. You can always get help if you ask for it, or tell the truth, or tell your story. And the world can be a cruel place, but not all of it is. Alright. Hope you've enjoyed listening, and see you all next time. Cheers.